Okay, just put today's day and date first. Tuesday, 20th August. So we're talking about the goods and services taxes. So we know we have three types basically of GST. That is your CGST, Central GST, the State GST, which is chargeable on the intrastate sales, and then we have the IGST, which is charged in case of interstate sales, when two states are involved, interstate sales or purchases, okay, sales or purchases, and these sales and purchases can be of goods and services, either of them, right? So we had talked about this part, and then we talked about the input GST and the output GST. So input GST is the GST which is payable, GST payable on purchases was input GST. And when we talk about the output GST, which is claimable or which is adjusted against the input GST, and it is the GST which is charged on sale. Okay, so quickly you can again copy down these points so that you remember these points. So GST is not very difficult, as in if you get hold of the entries, the journal entries will remain basically the same, bacho. The only thing is we are now putting GST part also. So the calculations we'll have to do, but the journal entries are not very difficult. The GST you have to include. But then you have to keep in mind there are certain services and certain transactions which are exempt from GST. Okay, so those transactions, you'll have to remember the transactions that are exempt from GST. So here we won't be charging GST, like your salaries payable to the employees, the wages payable to your workers, the laborers. Then when we pay the interest or when we receive the interest, the GST is not, it is exempt from GST. Okay, so electricity and water bill is exempt from GST. So you have to remember those transactions which are exempt from GST. Then there are transactions which are not exempt from GST, but GST cannot be claimed. Okay, transactions where input GST, please keep on writing, cannot be claimed against output GST. Okay, so there are certain transactions where we cannot claim the input GST against the output GST. So here we'll be adding GST, we'll be calculating GST, but not in the name of input GST and output GST. That becomes an expense for us. Okay, so see, if the transactions, there is a little bit difference. See, when the transaction is exempt from GST, you don't pay GST, right? And then transactions where input GST cannot be claimed against output GST, then what happens? Whatever input GST we are paying becomes our expense. We said input GST is basically an asset. Okay, not an expense. But if it can be claimed, if it can be set off against output GST. Now I'll tell you how do we set off and what we mean by set off. But if we cannot claim it, if we cannot set it off against the output GST, then it becomes an expense. So here GST will be treated as GST's expense over here. Okay, are you getting the difference, Bacho, that when GST is an asset and when it is an expense? Because the GST, input GST will always be having a debit balance. So debit balance हमारा दो चीजों का होता है. Expense is also debit balance and the asset is also debit balance. So we have to differentiate when it is an asset, when it is an expense. So most of the times GST, input GST paid is an asset, but most of the times, 99% of the times, 98% times you can say, the GST, input GST which we pay on our purchases is an asset, not an expense. But yeah, in this particular case, when the transaction of the input GST cannot be claimed against, cannot be set off against the output GST, then GST becomes our expense. The input GST becomes our expense. Okay. So these transactions we'll have to see. Then we'll see the reversal of GST. Okay. And then we'll talk about the reverse charge. Okay, so a little bit, all these topics I had discussed in the previous class also. Okay, and now today we'll be talking about the transactions of all these GST transactions. Okay, now just let me know who all were absent in the last class or have not gone through the recording also in spite of being absent. That means they are totally new to GST. Is there anybody? Raise your hands. Rehan, I cannot hear you. Okay, Rehan, didn't you? Rehan, Isha, didn't you go through the recording? Did I share it on the group? Isha?
Yes, ma'am, you did.
Okay, and then why didn't you go through it? Okay, didn't have time.
Ma'am, actually, I had a doctor appointment, so I'll go through it today.
Okay, please go through it today, bacho, Rehan, because this is in continuation. I mean, you need to know all these basic concepts, then you'll be comfortable passing the entries. Not a very difficult thing. Only when you, 4 or 5 concepts are there. So if you, go through those concepts, then it will be easy for you to pass the entries. Arhan, the latecomer, some are always late. Arhan is always almost the last one to join. Okay. So please join in time, Arhan. Okay, don't miss the part which we have covered. So we revised, Arhan, all the entries, all the topics which we had done in the last class. So I'm now telling you the basic entries before we move on to the questions. Okay, so come to the basic entries. But number one, when we purchase goods and services, intrastate or interstate, we had done this transaction, but because this transaction is so important and so commonly asked, that I'm doing it again. Okay. So the entry for purchases would be if it is cash purchase or credit purchase. So it will be purchases account debit. Okay. So I'm just writing a normal entry of purchases. Okay. And this entry only we will reframe if GST is involved so that you get idea of it, that how GST will affect our journal entries. Won't affect too much. In the same way, all the journal entries will pass. So our normal journal entry is purchases account debit to cash account if we are purchasing in cash, or it will be to creditors account if we are purchasing the goods or services on credit. Okay, now this is a normal transaction. Now what happens if GST comes into picture? Now when GST comes into picture, first of all, we'll have to see whether it is interstate purchases or intrastate. Suppose it is intrastate. Suppose it is intrastate purchases, then my entry would be, bacho, the entry, this entry which we've written will get changed like this. So we have purchases account debit still. With purchases, we are going to debit 2 more GST things, and that is input CGST account debit, input SGST account debit, to cash and to creditors account. Okay, so those.
Why do we debit?
Yes.
Ma'am, why do we debit?
Why do we debit? Okay, Isha, that okay, you'll have to go through the entire concept, Isha. We are debiting because this amount we have to pay along with the purchases, and this input GST which we are paying over here, we'll be crediting it, or we will be setting it off against the output GST. So what is GST? What do you mean by input GST? And how, how the treatment is done? The basic idea, you'll have to go through that recording. I won't be able to repeat the entire thing. Okay. So अभी के लिए बस try to understand the entries. Once you go through it, you will be able to easily understand it. So हमेशा ध्यान रखो जब भी हम कुछ purchase करते हैं, ईशा, so we have to give the GST. Like suppose you go to a restaurant. I'm giving you a very simple layman terms example. You go to a restaurant. Okay, you have to pay GST. So GST is an expense for you. Okay, over there, because restaurant bills are not claimable against GST. The food and beverages bills, bachon, is not claimable. But otherwise, this is an asset. Okay, because we'll get credit of it when we sell the goods to the other party, and the remaining amount only we will have to go and deposit it with the government. So okay, बच्चों नहीं भी समझ में आता है तो एंट्रीज करते जाइए, एंट्रीज समझ में आ जाएगी. When I talk about the set off part, then you will get the overall understanding of what we are doing, what is GST, how is it claimed against the output GST, what is the what is the the idea behind GST. I talked about the double taxation part, how the cascading effect comes. Okay. So that is how, all the taxes, all the indirect taxes in India were brought under one regime, and that was the GST, the goods and services tax. So बस अभी के लिए ध्यान रखो कि जहां पे भी हम परचेजेस को डेबिट करेंगे, साथ ही साथ आपका इनपुट जीएसटी और एसजीएस इंट्रा स्टेट सेल है. तो इंट्रा स्टेट क्या होता है? When you have within the state two cities, the transaction is between, say, Surat and Ahmedabad in Gujarat. Okay, so Surat and Ahmedabad both lie in the same state, and that is Gujarat. Okay, and the transaction is between the trader is the trader one, the seller is from Surat, and the purchaser is from Ahmedabad. So both these cities lie in Gujarat. Okay, so this is what we call as intrastate. Okay, and interstate is when it is between two different cities of two different states. Okay, like Jaipur of Rajasthan and say any other city of like Amritsar, okay, of Punjab. So there'll be two different cities which are involved. Clear? So that is what we call as interstate. Now, if it is interstate purchase, suppose I am here in UP, okay, and I purchase it from Jaipur. Okay, say a party in Lucknow is making the purchase from a trader in Jaipur. Now this is in Uttar Pradesh. This is in Rajasthan. Okay, when the transaction is between two different cities, of course, basically of two different states, cities of two different states, then it's known as interstate purchase. And then the entry would be, what is your normal entry? Purchases account debit, okay, to cash and to creditor if it is a credit purchase, creditor's account. This is a normal entry. The only thing is you have to insert input GST, and over here it will be input IGST. So interstate sale mein bachcho, it is always integrated GST. In intrastate it is two types of GST, CGST and SGST, central GST and state GST. But the only concept is that along with the purchases, the GST is also being debited. The only thing is SGST and CGST if it is intrastate, and IGST if it is interstate. This is clear? Done. So let's do some transactions of this kind. Okay. So rather than just discussing the journal entries, let's pass the journal entries along with the calculations, along with the figures. So come to the questions today. These all entries which we had discussed in the last class also. Now let's do one question. Open your books. Come to question number 1 of your practical problems. Let me come to the transaction of purchases. If it is given separately or the mixed transaction is given, then it will be a problem. Okay, but all the mixed transactions are given. We are not having the transactions of purchases along. Okay, maybe we can do one illustration. Okay, we'll do one illustration because the questions are not wherein we have only purchases ka transactions. I want you to be very clear with the purchases ka transaction so that I can move on to sales ka transaction, then the reverse charge and the cancellation of the GST. That is the reversal of GST. So open your books again. Come to illustration number 1. Come to illustration number 1.
Ma'am, which page number?
Page number is 12.15, bacho, 12.15 page. This is, I'm talking about the T.S. Grewal new edition, T.S. Grewal 24 edition. If you have older version, still it will be, I think, illustration 1 only. But yes, okay, let me tell you, GST mein bacho, you may find a little bit of changes. Okay, so if possible, please try to get the illustrations also of the latest book. Okay, by the end of the class, maybe I can share, not at this moment. Who all are having the old books, older versions? Nobody is having the older version. Everybody is having the new, the 24 version.
I have the last year's one.
Okay, Rehan. What about Akashni now? Which version do you have?
The old one. I think last year's one.
Last year's. Okay. So, okay, just try to see if the entries are the same, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll share with you the entries because there's a lot of dispute and confusion regarding the cash discount part. So at what stage will they give the cash discount? So every time when the disputes arise, they'll give a separate treatment. So this cash discount part has been changing in the last 3-4 years. Every year they give a separate point of view, and the entry which is passed with what amounts and the method of calculation has been changing. So because काफी changes हुए हैं उसमें. So if you can get the latest version, that will be good. But maybe you just observe. Okay, can you see this question, Akashlina and Rehan, of Ramesh? The first illustration, maybe first or second illustration. Journalize the following transactions of Ramesh.
Yes, ma'am.
It is the same. Fine.
Yeah.
The problem will be in the questions with cash discount when you're not making the total payment. Say 50% of the transaction is cash, 50% is credit, and then available, cash discount being available. So there'll be a little bit of change in the calculation. So I'll tell you there. Okay, what changes you have to make, or try to get the newer version of maybe some pictures from your friends, and that will be not much change. Okay, so come to this transaction. Purchase goods in cash 5,000, CGST, SGST 9% each. So I'm just passing the transactions. Just observe the transactions. These are very simple transactions. What I'll do, I'll first pass the transaction without GST because that you know, and in that we'll then insert GST so that you can make it out that yeah, it's easy. Maybe you don't have to do the question, okay, because it is already solved. Don't see the solution. Try to just see the screen, and then you'll get hold of how to pass the entry. So we're purchasing goods in cash, and since it is not written that no CGST, SGST is written. So generally, but IGST will be given, and CGST and SGST would be equal. So we know that when we talk about intrastate, it is 50% CGST, 50% SGST. IGST pura 100% होता है. That means if 18%. So IGST 18% होएगा. CGST, SGST 99% हो जाएगा. It is the revenue distribution between the center and the state. So we have to take half. Okay, so here they have given us 9% each. So see, the normal entry would be purchases account debit 5,000. Okay. Now I'm just passing the normal transaction, but yeah, I'm leaving 2 lines over here to cash account. This is a normal transaction which we pass, but I'm not writing the amount over here because it will include a GST part also. Now, because it is CGST and SGST, so with purchases, input GST is debited. Okay, sales के साथ में output GST होता है, purchases के साथ में input GST होता है. So with sales, my output GST would be credited, and with purchases, my input GST would be debited. Okay? So because it is intrastate, or they have already given us that it is CGST, SGST, so we don't have to go into that debate whether it is intrastate or interstate. It is clearly visible that it is intrastate because they have given CGST and SGST. So we'll do CGST, input CGST account debit. Okay, and input SGST account debit. Is the 9%, 9% of this becomes 450 and 450. So we don't have to pay only 5,000 for the purchases. If we are buying it from a registered GST taxpayer, then we have to pay him 5,900. Okay, 5,900. Is it clear, Rehan and Isha, the normal transaction?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Since you have to debit GST also because it is intrastate, input CGST, input SGST is being debited. Okay. In purchases made, the the narration. Okay, next one. Next one we'll just leave sold wala. Come to the April 8th transaction. April 8. Now, what is this? April 8 is a credit transaction budget. Because the name of the party is given, name of Karam is given, purchase goods from Karam for 10,000 plus CGST, SGST 9% each. So name of the party is given, that means, and it is not mentioned that it's a cash transaction. So it is a credit transaction. So my normal entry would have been purchases account debit, the amount is 10,000. And 2, I'm leaving 2 lines in between. 2, Karam account, Karam ko creditor bana denge hum apna. Okay, to Karam account. Right? So to Karam account, now I'm not filling in the amount over here because that will include GST also. And then I have to take care of my GST part. So again, input CGST account debit and input SGST account debit. So how much is it? 9% each again. So 900 and 900. So it becomes 11,800. The total amount will be 11,800. Right? Simple. So if it is a cash transaction, cash will be credited. If it is a credit transaction, the creditor will be credited. So that part is the same. The only thing is every time you have to insert these 2 lines. That is it. Nothing more. ठीक है ना, समझ में आ गया, बहुत मुश्किल नहीं है. Then moving on to the April 25 transaction. April 25 transaction is interesting. This is your reversal of input GST. Now, when do we reverse the input GST? I had given you the full list when we reverse the input GST. Okay, so please go through your notes carefully. So GST is reversed in case of purchase returns and all those special entries where purchases used to be credited. I hope you remember journal ka test you all have given. So the special entries where we used to credit purchases account is usually debit, being an expense. But there are special transactions when we credit purchase, like your goods lost by fire, goods withdrawn by the proprietor for his personal use, goods given away in charity and donation, goods given to the staff for their use, and then your goods used. What are the other transactions where we reverse or where we credit the purchases? Okay, so those are the transactions which we will be using over here, because in these transactions the purchases are credited, and so will be your input GST will be credited also along with the purchases. So when purchases is debited, we debit input GST. When purchases is credited in the special entries, we credit input GST. Very simple. So let's try to pass a normal entry for purchase return. So the normal entry for the purchase return is what? It is purchase return account debit. Okay. Purchases account is debit. Sorry, purchase return account is credited. Okay, so it is creditor account debit to purchase returns. This is my normal entry. Right. Now यहाँ पे हमको हमारे input GST को भी credit कर देना है. So to input CGST and to input SGST. Okay. And here the creditor का name is given Karam. I'm talking about the April 25 transaction. So rather than creditor, can I write Karam account? So rather than the creditor's name, I know. So I'm putting his name only. So we'll say Karam account debit to purchase return, the normal transaction. 2 more things we have credited to do. So this is purchase return. What is the other name for purchase return? You can say return outwards. Return outwards. So this is a very important transaction where we are doing reversal of the input GST. So the amount would be costing was 4,000. So this is 4,000 बच्चों. And then 99%, so 360, 9 4s are 360, 720, so 4720. This will be April 25 transaction. Clear? समझ में आ गया? समझ में आ गया? क्योंकि फिर अभी क्वेश्चन अपने आप करना आपको. Once I tell you sales का transaction, because in the question all the transactions are given mixture, but so we'll have to pass those transactions. We have to first understand all the journal entries and then only we can do the question. Now the transactions of sales. See, transactions of sales. I'm quickly revising it so that we can do the question. Now the normal entry for the sales is cash account debit, or if it is on credit, then we do debtors account debit, and to your sales account. If GST is involved, then the entry would be cash account debit, debtors account debit. Okay, to sales account and to GST account. And this we call as output GST. Sales pay output GST, purchases pay input GST, any expense input GST, any income output GST. Okay. So when we talk about any, when we are making expenses paid, so here input GST would be debited. Like your purchases, you're making the payment, rent paid, commission paid, okay, advertisement expenses paid, your stationery expenses paid, or your, so all the expenses paid, input GST would be debited. Any incomes received, output GST credited. Please write these two lines. This will help you pass all the journal entries. So like rent received, sales done, amount received, or like commission received. Okay, for all these, output GST would be credited. And whenever you pay expense along with your, so the normal entry, the only, this is the additional line which you have to insert. Additional you have to do. If you know the normal journal entries, bacho, then the journal entry will remain the same. Only input or output GST you have to drop. If it is expense, input GST, that will be debited along with the expense. If it is income related transaction, output GST would be credited along with that income. Done? Okay. So now we can move on to, maybe we'll do this transaction first, the same example. Can I change the sheet? Come to April 5 transaction, the same illustration. Illustration 1 only we are doing. So April 5 is sold goods for cash, 8,000 plus CGST SGST. So we'll pass the normal entry and then we'll see how we do it. So the normal entry is cash account debit to sales. This is the normal entry for sales. Now here, because GST is involved, so we are going to put output GST. So to output GST, CGST, and to output SGST account. Okay. Now the amounts. Now sales are 8,000. See, be careful about the amounts. जो basic amount है वो कहाँ लिखना है? Be very careful. See, the basic amount I'm writing in the sales column. And CGST, SGST at the rate of 9%. So 8 9s are 72. 8 9s are 72. So this makes it 1440. So 9,440. Okay. See the calculations are done. Yes, Isha, clear?
Yes, ma'am, it's clear.
Okay, clear to all, Bacho. I hope everybody else had attended the class, gone through the recording. If not, okay. Then the next transaction, come to April 15 transaction. That is also sales transaction. Sold goods to Param for 15,000 CGST interest. Now this is a credit transaction because the name of the party is mentioned. Okay, this is a credit transaction because the name of the party is mentioned. So what will be the entry? Try to pass the entry, Bachon. Try to pass the entry for this. So because it's a credit transaction, Param would be debited. So Param account debit. The normal entry would be to sales account. And because GST is there, so output CGST and to output SGST. So the sales are 5,000. So this sales return, sorry, it is the transaction of sales return. I'm so sorry. We are doing this. Okay, we are doing this transaction of April 15 only. This is correct. Okay, so the April 15 transaction is 15,000. And then, so this will be 1350 and 1350 at the rate of 9%. Okay, 9% and 9% of 15,000. So this becomes how much? 2,700. So it will become 17,700. Right? Are you able to pass the entries, Bachu? Moving on to the transaction where we are going to reverse this output GST. See, this is the sales entry. If I try to pass the entry for sales return, what would be entry? See the end reversal of this entry. Sales return is there. So sales return account is debited. Okay, along with that output. So all three are being credited over here. When we are making the sales return, when we don't like the goods and we are making the sales, we don't like our customer doesn't like the goods and he returns them back to us. So it is return inwards, or you can say sales return. So it will be debited. Okay, and also output CGST would be debited and output SGST would be debited. Okay, and to Param. And now see how which amount we fill there. So it is 5,000 is my sales return. This will be written over here. Uska then 9% we are going to pay. So 9,000 45, and that makes it 5,900. So if you know the basic entry and if you know the basic concept of your input GST and output GST, then you can pass the entries, and then you have to remember reversal of GST. So that is reversal of GST in case of sales is done at only one places, mostly at the time of sales return. Okay. But yeah, in purchases, input GST, you have a lot many places where the reversal of the input GST is done. That is all your special entries where purchases are credited. So now we can move on to our question. Okay, come to the question now. We'll pass the journal entries for that. 1-2 questions I'll be doing with you, and then you have to solve it yourself. So come to these questions. Page number 12.54. 12.45, sorry. Now, see, sometimes they will not give it is CGST, SGST, or IGST. You have to decide it yourself. So in that case, you have to see that where our business is located, or the owner in our question, where is he situated, and then when he is entering into the transaction, where that other party is situated. Right, so we have to see that. So in first question, I hope this is the same question. Please check Gurman wala question is there. Akash, Leena, and Rehan. Just see, can you see this question of Gurman of Delhi?
Yes, ma'am. It's there.
This thing. Okay, fine. So let's do this. Journalize the following transactions in the books of Gurman of Delhi. Number 1. sold goods to Krishna of Delhi. So Delhi and Delhi. Okay, so my owner Gurman is in Delhi. Okay, and he is transacting with another trader who's in Delhi only. So he's selling the goods to Krishna of Delhi at list price 20,000, less trade discount and GST, SGST, and allowed cash discount 5%. He paid the amount immediately. Now, this is a very nice question. We have the cash discount and trade discount for you. And please remember that whenever we have GST question, all the discounts are first given and then the GST will be calculated. Okay, so first you'll have to make the working note over here since there's a question of trade discount and cash discount. And please remember GST is payable on the final taxable amount, which is after deducting all discounts. Okay, so my list price, make the working note with me, quickly make the working note with me. List price is 20,000 less rate discount at the rate of 10%. That makes it 2,000. So this is my 18,000 less cash discount at the rate of 5%, which becomes 900. So this becomes 17,100. Okay. This is the cash discount part. Now this we have to calculate GST at the rate of 9% each. So add CGST at the rate of 9% of 1,700 and SGST at the rate of 9% of the 1,700. Okay, so calculate the figures. 1,700 into 9 upon 100 is 1,539 and 1,539 is the taxes which the other party has to pay to us. So the total price becomes 20178. See the entry, how we're going to pass. This was a cash transaction because we paid immediately. Cash account debit. Discount allowed account debit. Now, which discount is this? Cash discount, because trade discount we do not show. So we are going to show only the cash discount. So cash discount allowed account debit to sales account, to output CGST account, to output SGST. Now fill in the figures which you know. You know this is CGST, this is SGST. जो पता है figures वो तो कर दो, then we'll see if we get confused between which figure to go where. Okay. Sales account would be net sales after trade discount. This is your sales figure. Okay, because trade discount we do not show in the books. So this 18,000 would be credited to the sales account. Okay. And the discount allowed account would be 900, the cash discount. And the cash account would be 20,178. And now check whether my debits and credits are equal or not. That is very important in these transactions. Okay, 20,178 plus 900. My debit figures are 21,078. Let's me check my credit figures. 18,000 plus 1,539 plus 1,539. It is 21,078. This is debit, this is credit. So it is matching. Okay, so once you're able to make this working note, बच्चों, you'll be able to put in the figures. I hope. ठीक है? अच्छे से देख लो. है ना? ये तो figures तो आपको question से पता ही चल रही है. Sales account we had done earlier also that after trade discount, whatever figure we get will go to your sales account. Cash discount is what we show in our books, and that we have calculated. And then this was the final figure which we had. The only thing which you have to remember over here is the rule is, you can write the rule in a cloud over here. The rule for this transaction is but very simple, that GST is chargeable taxable amount after deducting all taxes, all discounts, sorry, all discounts. That means cash discount and trade discount, both. All discounts. Okay, that is why first I deducted trade discount, because number one, trade discount is deducted. Number two, cash discount is deducted. And then on the net figure, that's 17,100. These two figures we calculated 17,100. 9% of 17,100, 9% of 17,100 is 152. And then we got this, once this working note is made, bacho, to pass this journal entry to fill up the figures, you know the journal entry, you know the working note. The only thing is you have to pick up the figures in the working note and put it in the journal. Clear? Aditya, is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Done. Anushka?
Yeah.
As you keep on doing the transaction, you will get older, right, Anushka? So keep on practicing, but these questions, when I solve, you'll find them easier. But when you try to do it yourself, you will have a little bit of confusion. So the only key is you have to practice. But your accountancy, every day at least 1 hour to minimum you should do. Sincere. Every day, each day. Not even Sundays you should take 1 hour. Come to the second transaction, question number 1. Supplied goods costing 6,000 to Mohan of Kolkata, issued invoice at the rate of 10% above cost, less 5% trade discount, plus IGST 18%. So here there is no cash discount, good for us, no problem. Trade discount is not even shown in the book, so we don't have any problem. We just have to deduct it. But yeah, we'll have to make the working note because the GST part is in there. So see, my cost price, see, the working note will be interesting here. Write it properly. Don't miss any line. Write it the way I'm writing, neatly. Handwriting might not be beautiful, but has to be neat. So supply, the cost price for us was 6,000. To this, we are going to add our profit margin. So add profit at a rate of 10% above cost. That makes it 600. We want to have the profit. So my selling price, this is my list price. List price. Yeah, जिसे हम बोलते हैं invoice price. Yeah, जिसे हम बोलते हैं selling price. Selling price हमारा ये था. MRP जिसे बोलते हैं basically. And now we give trade discount at the rate of 5%. So that is to be deducted. Yes, trade discount at the rate of 5%. 5% of 6,000 will be 300. Or minus ho jayega. So 5,700. This is my sales. Okay, with this figure, sales account will be credited. Why? Because I told you trade discount is not shown in the book. So only after deducting the trade discount, whatever figure we get, that only goes to the books.
मैम 660 नहीं होगा?
6,600 हो गया. Sorry. 66. I wrote that I didn't add it. So this will be 6,600. So this would be 330. 330 हो जाएगा ना? Okay.
Yes, मैम. मैम क्योंकि decimals में आ रहे थे तो इसलिए.
Because I didn't add it over here. 6,000 कोई नहीं लिखा. वो add होके हमारा selling price जो बना वो 6,600 बना. और फिर इस would be 330. And this when deducted will give me 6,270. That would be my sales price. Okay. उसके बाद इसमें हम ऐड करें, इसमें कैश डिस्काउंट तो है ही नहीं गुड, अदरवाइज वी वुड हैव फर्स्ट डिडक्टेड द कैश डिस्काउंट, नहीं तो सीधा ऐड कर दो अपना जीएसटी। तो जीएसटी कितना परसेंट बोल रहा है? 18%। और आईजीएसटी है यहाँ पे बच्चों, क्योंकि कोलकाता का है। The purchaser is from Kolkata and this person is in Delhi. So you can see we have Delhi and we have West Bengal. So two different states, and therefore it is what you call as interstate sales. Interstate transaction. Yeah. Interstate में तो IGST लगता है. So integrated GST, IGST integrated GST, the rate of 18%. So 6,270 का 18% लेना पड़ेगा. A lot of many calculations हो गई हैं. कितना आ रहा है? इसका 18%. 1128. वन टू नाइन ले लो.
1129.3.
11.6 नहीं आ रहा है. So we're taking 1129. So that makes it 993,739. Okay, 7,400 ही ले लो फिर उसे. Take it 130. Okay, take it 130. 1130. That makes it 7,400. And then the entry. So the entry would be the final entry. Would be now this is a credit transaction because this person is not making the payment. The name of the party is mentioned. So we'll write Mohan account debit. Trade discount is not shown in the books, so that we are not going to debit that. So to sales account, to output IGST account. This would be the entry. So IGST for sure we know as 1130. IGST को पता है. Sales कितने की हुई? ये वाली sales है 6270. तो मोहन अकाउंट कितने से डेबिट कर देंगे? 7,400 से. ये वाला फाइनल फिगर जो है अभी चेक कर लो कि सेम है कि नहीं, डेबिट्स एंड क्रेडिट्स. सो डेबिट, वैसे कैश डिस्काउंट नहीं होगा तो डेबिट और क्रेडिट में ज्यादा परेशानी होगी. इट इज ओनली इन केस ऑफ कैश डिस्काउंट दैट यू हैव टू have confusion what amount will go there, if at all. कंफ्यूजन नहीं होता है तो कोई, आई मीन डोंट थिंक कि वो कंफ्यूजन में नहीं हो रहा है. You're doing it nicely, that is why. Question number 1, that third part. Can I move on to the previous next sheet? Yeah, added it now. Rehan, I think that was, yeah, thank you. You pointed it out. But maybe if I don't see the chat, just unmute and tell me. Okay. Right, Rehan? This profit I had not added actually.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we move further? Question 1, third part. Goods value 2,500 distributed from stock as samples, free samples, as part of an advertising campaign, advertising expenses. These goods were purchased paying CGST, SGST 9% each. So this is the transaction where you have to credit the purchases account. Okay, so we'll write the normal entry and then we'll see the GST part. Okay, so we have the entry as Akashina, you got disconnected. Just take a screenshot of this question, beta. Question number 1, the second part. Done.
Yeah, done.
Now we're moving to the third part of Ashwini. Now, goods valued, this were distributed as stock, as samples. So these are special transactions where we credit purchases and we can debit either advertisement expenses or samples account debit or marketing expenses account debit. Okay, so I'm putting it in the name of advertising expenses because that is the word they have used. So advertising expenses account debit. I'm writing the normal entry first. To purchases account. This is a normal entry. Now, because the GST is involved, so when we debited purchases, we debited input GST also. When we are crediting purchases, we are going to credit the input GST also. So to input CGST account and to input SGST account. Okay, so 3 would be debited together, 3 would be credited together. So that was 2,500. Now see where we are going to put this 2,500 over here. Okay, not over here. Over here. And then 9% of this. So this 2,500 is 9%, 225 and 225. So that makes it 450. So 2950. Okay. So please make sure that the amount which is given of purchases, you have to credit in purchases only. And then GST part would be added separately because they gave us that purchases for paper. Had they given us this inclusive of GST, then fine, you would have done this and then you would have got this. Okay, sometimes they may do this also. They'll give you the total advertisement expenses inclusive of GST. They may give you this figure rather than this figure. And they won't give you the rate. So in that case, you'll have to split it into, so that would be basically 118%. Because this is 9% and this is 9%. So then the reversal of the calculation we have to do. I'll talk about those questions also, but very important questions. Wherein sometimes they won't give you this figure, but they'll give you this figure, which is inclusive of GST. So it is inclusive of 18% GST. तो उसको हमें तीनों पार्ट्स में स्प्लिट करना पड़ेगा. परचेज कितना, CGST कितना, IGST कितना. So purchase हमें अलग से निकालना पड़ेगा, which is 100%, and then CGST would be 9% and SGST would be 9%. तो वो 118 हमारे को टोटल दिया हुआ होगा, उसको हमें अलग-अलग पार्ट्स में डिवाइड करना पड़ेगा. Not in this question, I'm just telling you that this kind of question also will be coming forward. Can I change the sheet? Question number 1, the fourth part.
Ma'am, just a small query. Ma'am, when it comes to short forms, can we write short form of of input and output like that only?
No, input you'll have to write the full input.
Oh, okay.
बहुत ही टाइम अगर कम हो तो फिर just give a note for that. The input को we have put input like this and output को we have put output like this. अगर time बिल्कुल कम हो तो otherwise get into the habit. When you're practicing, it's fine. So in the exam, you have to put the full forms.
Okay.
Question number 1 for fourth part. Sold goods costing 1 lakh to Anil of Delhi at a profit of 20% on sales, less 20% rate discount for CGST, SGST, 9% each. So this is a small, this is a simple transaction. Why they have given? Okay. Yeah, I'll tell you what is the twist in this question. Can you make out? Yes. Can anybody tell me what is that? Why they have given this transaction? I felt in the first go that it was a simple transaction. Why did they repeat this transaction? It was almost the same as the second one. But here the profit percentage is given on the sales. The profit percentage in the second part was given on cost. Okay, see the difference between, try to compare the second and the fourth part. बच्चों ऐसे comparison करोगे तभी clarity आएगी concepts की. A very small change in the language is there. See the second part and underline it. They have given the profit margin as invoice at 10% above cost. Please underline that invoice कितने पे किया हमने 10% above cost. And in point number 4, the profit margin is profit of 20% on sales. Underline it. Second में profit percentage was calculated on cost. Fourth में profit percentage is calculated on sales. Okay. That is the difference between the second and the fourth part. Okay, so see how we are going to do it. Working note. My cost price, which I'm selling, the cost price of that is 1 lakh. To this, I'm adding profit. Add profit at the rate of 20% on sales. I don't know how much is the selling price. But yeah, I know the cost price. So if it is 20% the sales price, please remember, I had given you the table earlier. It is equivalent to at the rate of 25% on cost price. Remember, ये अगर 1/5 है, तो ये क्या हो जाता है 1/4. Or otherwise, using the X, the unitary method, you can always do it. I'm showing the unitary method also if you've forgotten this thing. Okay. So, see, let selling price be equal to 100. So, profit is equal to 10 rupees. Profit is 10 rupees. Yes, it is 10% of the, no, profit is 25. Kitna profit percentage? 20% on sales. So अगर मेरी selling price, I imagine that to be 100 rupees. So I'm applying the unitary method, बच्चों. If you don't remember, which I had taught you, the table I had given you, वैसे that table you should learn, okay? Because that table is important for 12th also. We are going to use it. Otherwise, every time you'll have to do the unitary method and waste your time. So I'm applying the unitary method over here. Once I'm telling you, okay. So if the selling price is 100, then profit is 20% of the sales selling price, that is 20. Okay. So फिर cost price कितना हो गया? Cost price is equals to selling price minus profit, which is equal to 100 minus 20, which is equal to 80. Okay. So if my cost price is 80, now unitary method I'm using, if cost price is 80, then my selling price or my profit is 20. If the cost price is, how much is it given? 1 lakh. Cost price is 1 lakh, then what will be the profit? So it will be 20 upon 80 into 1 lakh. आगे 1/4, आगे 25%. ये कितना हो गया? 1/4 हो गया? कितना हो गया? 1/4 of 25%. Okay, so you can use unitary method, or you can directly learn the relation that if it is 1/5 of sales, this automatically implies will be 1/4 of cost. Or if in terms of percentage, I want to write it is 20% of selling price sales, it will be 25% of cost. These relationships you can learn by heart, or every time apply the unitary method, your choice. There is one full recording. So Parnika, you don't answer. If possible, try to attend the class another 10 minutes only. Okay, just keep on writing if possible, if you're not feeling very ill. Okay. And maybe if you're not feeling fine, you can leave the class, yours. Okay, you can watch the recording later. But yeah, only 10 minutes, so if you can stretch it thoda sa, then do it, otherwise if comfortable. Okay. So now, coming back to the fourth transaction, coming back to the working this thing. So 1/4 on the cost price. So this becomes 25,000. So the selling price becomes, which I call the MRP or the list price or the invoice price. Okay, invoice price becomes 1,25,000. And this, with this, we have to deduct the trade discount. So less trade discount at the rate of 20%. 20% of 1,25,000 would be 25,000 again, but we have to show it. Okay, so again it becomes 1 lakh. So this is my sales amount. Sales is amounts of credit going. Then I have to add, no cash discount is there, so add CGST at the rate of 9%, and SGST rate of 9%. 9,000 and 9,000, so this becomes 1,10,000. Now we have all the figures. Now we have to pass the transaction. So see the transaction button. It will be, this is a credit transaction, right? So Anil account debit. No cash discount, so discount would be debited to sales account, to output CGST account, to output SGST account. So output CGST and SGST for sure we know is 9,000, 9,000. ठीक है, सेल्स का फिगर क्रेडिट हमने किया है 1 लाख, और ये वाला फिगर हो जाएगा अनिल को 1,80,000. And of course your debits and credits are matching, happen to be 1,18,000. This will be the transaction. So herein what you have to understand was calculation of profit on cost price or selling price. So be careful. Okay. So calculation, write the formulas which are profit on selling price or cost price. You have to be careful. Okay, unitary method you can always apply. जो भी आपको दे रखा जिस पे परसेंटेज उसको 100 मान लीजिए. Okay, and then it will become easier. Moving on to the next question. Journalize the following transactions in the books of Gupta Brothers, Lucknow. Now the place of trade is Lucknow. Quickly come to question number 2. So the place in the bookshop, just put in the books because we're passing the journal. So in the books of Gupta Brothers, Lucknow. And if you know, don't know which state, so it is Uttar Pradesh. Okay. So we'll have to say interstate or intrastate. 2024, March 1. Started business with cash and this and this. So investment of capital, no GST. Okay, without GST. So normal transaction we have to do. So cash account debit. इस पे कोई GST नहीं होता है, ठीक है? Goods account debit. Goods account debit means stock account debit basically. You can say stock or goods. And furniture asset account debit. To capital account. So this is the amount of investment in the business. He has invested 30,000 for cash. He has invested stock worth 15,000. He has invested furniture worth 20,000. So that makes it 45, 55, 65,000 for capital, being capital invested in the business, being capital invested. In this transaction, there is no GST involved. Okay, never GST on the capital investment. So GST is never calculated. Question number 2, March 2 transaction. Contra entries. Never the GST is calculated on contra entries. Please remember, don't insert GST on your own. वैसे भी GST, IGST they have not given you. So don't do it. Paid into bank. So it's a contra entry. So maybe bank account debit, the cash account. Amount is 1,000. Being cash deposited into bank. Quickly write, these are very simple entries. I'm not going to wait. Pass the entries on your own. Okay? Or if you want to copy, then copy it very quickly. Because here we are doing the GST only transactions. Okay? Let's not waste time on the normal transactions. 2 का March 3 transaction. Bought goods from Mohan Brothers, Lucknow on credit. Now this seems to be a which transaction? GST transaction. This is a transaction of purchases, and we are purchasing it from Lucknow. So IGST should be charged, right, Bacho? But they are not given the rate. They have given the rate at the end of the question. Go to the last
CGST should be charged, right?
Yes, ma'am. CGST and SGST.
charge. It's interest. So CGST, SGST will be charged, and at the end of the question, they have given the CGST, SGST. Okay, it is rather the same city only. Intrastate also and intercity only. Intracity only, not even intercity. Okay, so CGST, SG rates are given. See, like this, if they give you the rates in the end, then you will have to decide which transaction GST will be involved, which transaction GST to be avoided. Okay, so obviously sales and purchase transaction, the GST is there, a set of purchase transaction GST is there, rent paid GST is there, advertising expenses or stationery expenses, commission paid. All these transactions will have a GST. Electricity and water does not have. Okay, capital investment does not have. Banking transaction does not have. I mean the contract ways. But yes, bank charges, the GST is there. Bank interest, no GST. Interest paid, interest received, no GST. Okay.
Ma'am,
So
should we make a list out of it?
yes, there is a list. We had written that list in the last class, Isha.
Okay.
Yeah. So once you go through that recording, you'll be able to make the notes. So all the notes properly, we had made the list of which transactions are exempt, which transactions the input GST is not given the credit for, which transactions we do not have to consider GST as a reverse charge. I mean, so those, and now we are doing the related questions. So इसमें CGST, SGST होगा, इंटरेस्ट रेट है, तो करो मार्च 3 का ट्रांजैक्शन अपने आप पास कर लो बच्चों. और फिर चेक करो अपनी ट्रांजैक्शन से, try to do it on your own and then check it with my figure, with my answer. I'm sure all of you would be able to do it on your own now. Purchases account debit, input CGST account debit, input SGST account debit, and it's not a cash transaction, it is a credit transaction to Mohan Brothers. We are Gupta Brothers, okay? So Mohan Brothers. कितने का खरीदा देखो अब amounts, be careful amounts. 7,000. 7,000 कहाँ जाएगा? Purchases में जाएगा 7,000, and then 99%. They have given the rate at the end of the question. So that becomes 630, 630, 1260. So 8,160, 260. 1260 हो गया total. GST में quote करके 8,000 plus 1260. Okay, being intra-state credit purchases. Okay, done. I change the sheet. Isha, done.
Yes.
So March. For transaction. Sold goods to Goel Brothers of Kanpur. Kanpur is again in UP only, and they have given also on credit. So it's a credit sales transaction. So in again intrastate. So it will be CGST, SGST sales transaction, normal transaction, easy. Okay, we can quickly pass it. So it will be Goel Brothers would be debited to sales account, to output CGST account, to output SGST account. Now see the amount, 6,000. Where will the 6,000 go in this sales figure? And then 99%. So 540 and 540, so that becomes 1,080. So 7,080. In credit, say credit, intra-state sales. Okay, 9% or 9% again of this figure. आ जाओ नेक्स्ट ट्रांजैक्शन पे March 5 got a computer against check. Now computer is an asset. Asset पे भी GST लगता है बच्चों, ठीक है, GST लगेगा. और कंप्यूटर तो हम जहाँ पे प्लेस ऑफ ट्रेड है वहीं पे खरीदेंगे most probably if they have not given anything else. So when you purchase an asset, GST is charged. Depreciation पे GST नहीं लगता बच्चों. Okay, remember no GST on depreciation transaction. But yeah, when you purchase an asset, GST is charged. So you go and buy a computer, you'll see that GST they'll find, they'll take GST. Even if you go and buy a dress, they'll charge GST. So what to talk of computer, right? So it'll be computer account debit, input GST account debit, CGST account debit, input SGST account debit. Be careful of writing input and output. Sales के साथ में output, purchase के साथ में या कोई भी expense के साथ में input. ठीक है? ऐसा नहीं आउटपुट इनपुट में मत गलत कर देना, पूरा एंट्री रॉन्ग हो जाएगा. तो बैंक see what figure is given. Computer is of 20,000. ठीक है ना, तो कंप्यूटर में 20,000 लिखेंगे बच्चों, बड़ा बड़ा लिखा नहीं. और फिर इस पे 99% लगा दो. So 9% will be 1,800 and 1,800, that means 3,600. So 23,600. तो कंप्यूटर था तो 20,000 का ही, लेकिन हमको उसका कॉस्ट जीएसटी मिला के it inflates the cost, no, 360 we pay for GST also. So bank account, we had to give a check of 23,600, but the computer cost was only 20,000. Okay. Yeah. Come to March 7, receipt from salesmen for goods sold by them. Okay, now this is a very, very interesting transaction. Mark 5-star only. Now, why did I make you mark? Please mark it in your registers or in your books also. Make a lot of untidy book, lot of markings, so that when you revise, you have to revise this transaction. Because all other transactions are of the same kind and you have got comfortable with all the transactions. This is a different type of a transaction. Now, receive from salesman for goods sold. Total we received from salesman was how much? 11,800. Okay. So, if we cash account debit 11,800. Now I don't know how much was the sales, but cash I received is this. Now to sales account, to output to output CGST account. I don't know whether it is IGST or CGST, so we take it as intrastate sales only, and to output SGST. No problem, Suparnika, you can leave it up. Take care. We get bills. Now see what you cash account would be debited by 11,800. Now this figure includes 100% sales plus 9% GST plus 9% your SGST. Okay, so this 11,800. Now I have to split this figure into these two figures. So 11,800 is equal to 118%. So how much is 100%? Okay, unitary method is what I'm applying over here again. Okay, now unitary method ही apply कर रहे हैं. So 11,800 into 118 multiplied by 100. So I'll get my 100% sales. तो ये तो आपका सीधा सीधा आ जाएगा. So my sales is 10,000. 100%. This 100% I'm getting this figure. So 100% 10,000 मेरा sales कितना हो गया? 10,000. फिर इसका 9% ले लो. 900. वैसे भी आगे 18%. Okay, this is important, and let me know all if you have understood it or not. Just raise your, give me a thumbs up if you have understood the calculation. Very important transaction. After the, everybody please show a thumbs up if you have understood. If not, we'll do it again. Okay. So here, see, the amount was given inclusive of GST, everything. Salesman sold it and gave us the amount. He gave it to, he came to me and gave me 11,800. Now this 11,800 which he gave me includes the selling price, the sales which he made, plus also the GST which he has collected from the customer. See, whenever we make the sales, we take the GST from the customer. So this figure was inclusive of GST. So this 11,800, अगर हम उसे X की terms में लिखें, is equal to my sales plus my output CGST plus my output SGST. So my sales, if I take it as 100, I don't know, it is X. Okay, and this is 9% of X, and this is 9% of X. Okay, so 11,800 is my X plus 9% of X plus 9% of X. So it becomes how much? 0.009x. इसको मैं बोलती हूँ, अगर इसको x बोला तो ये 0.09x हो गया और ये 0.09, तो ये कितना हो गया? 1.18x हो गया. ठीक है, तो x की वैल्यू निकाल लो, divided by 1.18 is equals to x is equals to 10,000 is equals to sales. आगे आप समझ में आ गया सबको? जो मैथमेटिकल माइंड वाले बच्चे हैं, they can take it like this. ठीक है ना, x के टर्म्स में निकाल लो. हमको 11,000 टोटल 800 दे दिया सेल्समैन ने, उसमें सेल्स है और उसमें आउटपुट जीएसटी एसजीएसटी जो उसने कस्टमर से लिया वो भी इंक्लूडेड है, which is 0.09x. So if I take x as 100, x sales as x, output CGST हो गया मेरा 0.09x. So this plus this is total 11,800. So 11,800 is equals to 1.1x. So x is equals to. Clear? Moving on to the next transaction. सबने कॉपी कर लिया? Can I remove this page? Can I delete it? हो गया मतलब सबका. So now page number 2 का कौन सा transaction करना हमें? 10. March 10. Goyal Brothers gave check deposited into bank 7080. Now see, this again includes who's Goyal Brothers? अच्छा, ये तो ऊपर वाली ट्रांजैक्शन का ही है जो हमने किया था ना, ट्रांजैक्शन नंबर 4. See March 4 का ट्रांजैक्शन. My see it is matching over here. You can confirm within the question that your answer is correct or not. So Goyal Brothers ko we had made the credit sales and now he is giving us the payment. Okay. So check payment पे अभी GST नहीं लगता है, ठीक है ना, कुछ GST नहीं होता. तो ये इन्होंने जब debtor बने थे, now they're paying us the money. So what will be the entry बच्चों? Entry is very simple. Bank account debit 7080 to Goyal Brothers. So this also confirms that our March 4 transaction is correct. Check received from debtor, that is Goyal Brothers. Okay. Now moving on to the next transaction, March 11. Paid to Mohan Brothers by check 6,700, discount allowed by them. So this transaction is March 11th transaction. Mohan Brothers वाला कौन सा transaction था? March 3 वाला transaction था. Now they're giving us discount also. Now here we have to do the reversal of this reversal of input GST to be done. Because this is a cash discount transaction. So March 11th transaction onwards we'll be discussing in the next class. It's an important transaction. Please put 10 stars of it. Okay, छोटे-छोटे बना दो, 5 स्टार ही बना दो, जितने बनाने हैं, but revise कर लेना when you revise it for your exams. This we'll be doing continuing in the next class. Okay. So thank you for patiently attending the class, doing all these entries. Yes. Any doubt?
What about
Yes?
triple column cash book?
Okay, bachcho. So here I'm ending the class. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am,
Thank you,
what
ma'am.
about the triple column cash book?
Yeah.
Triple column cash.
Okay. Just give me a call. I'll discuss that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, ma'am.